September 14, 2021 meeting of Woodstock Community Unit School District 200 Board of Education. Please rise for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Dr. Bidwell? Here. Dr. Ferris?
Present.
Mr. Gilmore?
Here.
Mr. Headley?
Here.
Mr. Homa?
Present.
Mr. Maselli?
Here.
Mr. Parisi?
Here. Okay, first item of business tonight is our consent agenda. There is a personnel addendum. Please take a moment to review the personnel addendum and the consent agenda. And if any board member would like to pull any items for further consideration, let me know. Whenever anybody's ready, there is a suggested motion in your packet.
Move to waive the reading of and approve the consent agenda as printed in the board agenda, including the September 14th, 2021 routine personnel matters addendum.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Parisi, seconded by Dr. Bidwell. Roll call, please.
Mr. Parisi?
Yes.
Dr. Bidwell? Yes. Mr. Homa?
Yes.
Mr. Headley?
Yes.
Mr. Maselli?
Yes.
Dr. Ferris?
Yes.
Mr. Gilmore?
Yes. Next item in our communications. Communications are a time for community members and district employees to express a point of view, not to debate an issue. There's a sign-up sheet for the public to identify their name, address, phone number, name of the organization represented, if any, and a brief description of the topic to be addressed. Comments are generally limited to 3 minutes in accordance with board policy 2:23. Do we have a list? Okay, the only person we have asking to speak is Mr. Welty. Yes.
Thank you for the opportunity. I wanted to address I have a prepared statement. I wanted to address the board's reaction to my question during the August board meeting regarding the district's stance on anti-racism and whether or not the board was aware of the attempts to make it part of the curriculum by the state, district, or faculty members, or really any other means. I was a little concerned because it's a lot more complicated than just something like, anti-racism doesn't mean it's just not racism or teaching that racism is bad. There's actually a pretty vibrant movement with anti-racism. I'm sure people have heard about it. So I was a little concerned that the reaction I got was almost like confused and a little bit of bewilderment. So I just have a prepared statement just explaining what anti-racism is. So anti-racism isn't the opposite of racism. The term is in my opinion, is a misnomer that unfortunately is quite successfully obfuscated what the intention of it is and what they're trying to do in action with that term. The term was created, or at least thought of by critical race theorists, and insists that American society, this is my interpretation of it, insists, because they'll likely have different and varying definitions of what it means and what they intend to do, and it's likely evolved over the past 4 decades or so. So insists that American society and white people in general are perpetrators of a massive conspiracy to prevent black people from succeeding. It alleges that all disparity between whites and blacks are a direct result of racism, and that the only way forward is to fight against whatever the anti-racists declare is racism. That's really the big sticking point. It's because a lot of their general statements can seem like very well-intended and well-meaning. They want people to have access to equal opportunities and not be left behind type of thing. And I think everybody obviously agrees with that. But unfortunately, it's left up to kind of their interpretation of what that means. So, for example, take standardized testing. There's been some instances already where standardized testing has kind of been declared as potentially racist and that they're gone away with altogether. So I know that's not something that's probably around here, but that's just an example of when you leave it up to a theoretical body to dictate what is racism, and then the action to get rid of that is something that they would declare as anti-racism when it's not. There's nothing that proposes that a test to study cognitive abilities has any type of racial, movement or momentum. So anyway, anti-racism excludes any other explanation to be considered. So they would directly relate the disparity that may show up in a standardized test or maybe a hiring practice as explained by racism itself, and not by potentially thousands of other contributing factors. So it's, in my view, it's a very anti-scientific, anti-intellectual explanation of something that everybody wants to try to help and fix in some way. And then the other really bad part of that is that they think that anybody that denounces or says that, wait a minute, that's not the right way to look at it, that they're actually racist and part of the problem. So an intellectual debate, that's why there probably really hasn't been any debates, because they won't debate the issue, is that because they label the person that's debating it as a racist or as facilitating this great movement of racism in America. So I just have a couple other quotes from some of the people that are more famous in this movement. Well, there's another quick statement. So equity, not equality, is the desired outcome if you're an anti-racist. So you want equal outcomes, but the equality is kind of like a byproduct. They probably would say that they want equality, but what they really want is equal outcome. And whatever you have to do to get that, be it, remove the test entirely, is part of that agenda, or potentially. So I mentioned Ibram X. Kendi last time. He declares that being not racist isn't enough, that one must be anti-racist, and that we're either all being racist or anti-racist. So if you're not anti-racist, then you're racist and perpetuating this American sin of racism. So another quote from him, or another explanation from him, I don't know if this is a paraphrase or a direct quote, but his definition of a racist is one who is supporting a racist policy through their actions or inaction, or expressing a racist idea. And an anti-racist is one who is supporting an anti-racist policy through their actions or expressing an anti-racist idea. But who decides who's racist and anti-racist? His definition is like circular logic. The definition of what he's trying to define is within the definition. So it's self-referential, it doesn't mean anything. And that's kind of part of this issue. And that's maybe where some of the confusion was, because that's not what it means. And he won't even, this is somebody who's very high on this list of influential people who are anti-racist. And he can't even really offer a coherent definition or how to really enact it. So anyway, CRT and anti-racism have no place in the academic setting other than an example of something to avoid, like describing the characteristics of a poisonous snake or plants when you're out in the woods. Some other quotes from critical race theorists. Gloria Lansing-Billings believes CRT is a program for making race the central construct of understanding inequality. So any other potential problem, be it location or parents in the home or anything, those are secondary to being racist and racism. Derek Bell, in his interest convergence thesis, alleges that white people have no motivation to do the right thing unless it directly benefits them. And that as well, whites have made things worse by making racism more difficult to detect. I think he was referring to white, maybe allies or white people that are joining in the civil rights type movements. Robin DiAngelo stated racism is the ordinary state of affairs. And in every situation, the question isn't, was there racism, but rather, how did the racism affect the situation? So in any situation, it's not, was that racist potentially? That's not even where they're at. They're saying, how did racism affect that? So it's the default, so the default answer to any disparity or any problem that can be addressed. So, I mean, I have some other quotes from people, or not quotes, but some things that if you guys are interested in looking into, there's some opponents to CRT and anti-racism to look at, much more articulate than me, and it would take far too long to discuss. But I'm willing to share that information. I don't know if there's an email some things too for people that might be interested. But I was just very concerned because, obviously racism is something that everybody is aware of and would never want to, teach to kids as far as something that is, noble or moral. So the response that I got about anti-racism was very concerning, being that, it's pretty common to see these terms in modern socio-political discussions right now.
I think some of the responses you received the last time probably was due to the fact that you weren't discussing the term that was defined movement as we did tonight.
Mm-hmm.
All right, are you anti-racist? Well, yeah, we're not. You're racist, right? You
right, and that's the problem with that language.
That might have been some minor conflict with the reception.
Right.
As far as I'm aware, there's nobody who's come to this board that's asked to implement any type of program of any sort. And I'm not sure that anyone's, I don't know if anyone's talked more about it. But I mean, the district exists to educate children, and part of existing to explore different views on things.
Sure.
Right or wrong or whatever, to explore different views on things. Right? And so at this point, what you're asking is, has anyone come to your board and said, you need to do this?
No.
The answer is no.
It's more of a, hopefully that I've clarified that position, and please be aware of it, and be aware of that, because it is, it's not a conspiracy where some people are, they're trying to act like this is a big conspiracy trying to take over the world or something. This has been a growing movement, and it's filtering in from colleges, and it's coming into more where it wasn't really before. It wasn't really in middle schools and high schools until maybe 5-10 years ago, and it's getting to a point where it's manipulating how kids look at reality, and it's a little bit more pervasive than just offering an alternative opinion. It's something that's expressed as fact from teachers, and it looks like it's not a part of this district, which is I'm very thankful for. But please be aware of it and be looking out for it, and just educate yourselves on it.
If you want to send materials, BOE@WCUSD200.org.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time. Thanks for coming and clarifying again. That's all the people who signed up. Does anybody else wish to address the board at this time? Sure. You want to tell us your name and so forth, you can?
Sure. Good evening. My name is Jose Cruz. I am a freshman at Woodstock North and a 7th grader at Woodstock Middle School. Yesterday was an unfortunate situation where my 12-year-old had to come home because she had a headache because of all the situations revolving COVID. This is probably an uphill battle, right? But I guess I just want to bring some awareness. And as a parent, I oppose these masks. I really do. And these kids are going through so much being at school, and they're constantly getting challenged every day just to try to fit in school. And I'm doing everything I can to possibly have these exchanged as frequently as possible, but a lot of these kids don't understand that. A lot of these kids just want to comply and have the nicest little mask, and they can want to use it for as many times as they need just to try to fit in and comply. And just like there's pros, there's a lot of cons to this as well. And I think we'd be very naive to think that these 100% help all the time. And these kids are exposed to so much, and I know this is happening everywhere. I know this is happening to other parents. With one kid I know because they live in the same household. But you can't sit here and think, just because one kid, everyone has it. And I understand there's protocols about this, right? But anything we can do to possibly get rid of these things, because These kids are suffering, and it's almost like an abuse. And as a parent, that's the way I see it. That's my comment.
Any other public comments at this time? Okay, then we'll move on to staff comments. Are there any staff comments? Board comments? All right, there being none, we'll move into the superintendent's report.
We have a late start tomorrow, so all schools start 1 hour later. Staff have professional development activities in the morning, buses run 1 hour late in the morning, and all dismissal times remain the same after school. We're looking forward to parent-teacher conferences, first week of October, preparing information to go out to parents shortly so they can schedule the conferences. Half day of school on the 6th, which is a Wednesday, no school on Thursday 7th or Friday 8th. And parent-teacher conferences on Wednesday evening and all day Thursday. Conferences will be remote again this year, as they were last year. Information will go out to parents during scheduling the conferences, which we look forward to. The remote forum actually worked well for us last year, so we've been able to continue that and have the opportunity for our staff and parents to interact and to get feedback on how the semester is going. It's a different start to the year than we've had. We'll talk a little bit more coming up how it's going, but it'd be great to get parents' point of view and to have that interaction between our teachers and our parents. So we encourage all parents to take part.
Okay, thank you. We have no unfinished business, so our next item is new business. The first item of new business is a review of the 2021-2022 strategic plan goals.
So we brought them back. I think the one revision the board asked for, I'm not sure if we hit on that or not. We put it in there. I'm not sure if that's what we were looking for, but the way it reads now is a report will be provided to the board on options that can be offered for students to allow remote learning classes and growth experiences and opportunities during the summer. It's kind of open to have remote, and also what else we could do on just different opportunities, different ways to grow. So we can definitely look into that as the year goes. Everything else was I think, what we talked about, but we're absolutely open to feedback or anything you'd like to see different before we bring it back for final approval.
I noticed you put that in there. Thank you for doing that. Do any other board members have any comments or questions or concerns regarding the strategic plan report? So we will vote on this at our next meeting.
Yes. Yep.
So you got 2 weeks to review and make any changes if you want.
Let me know if you have anything.
Unless any board members have any other items on this? Okay. We'll move on to our transportation updates.
So the crux of the update is transportation is a struggle for us right now in a variety of ways. But what we're going to talk about tonight really is staffing. We knew we were short-staffed and issues that we thought should have come to fruition, and we're struggling to get buses to school on time. We're struggling to get kids home at the end of the day, and it's not from a lack of effort on anyone's part. Our drivers are doing an amazing job. A lot of them are dropping off a route and then going picking another route up right away. The transportation office works nonstop, weekends, nights, everything to get it happen. We're short-staffed right now. We're recruiting staff, and it's a long process to go from the time we recruit them to get them through CDL process. Get them approved by the state, probably 4 to 6 weeks, somewhere around that period. So, even though we've hired a number of staff in the last couple of weeks, not only will it not fill our void, but we're also losing staff. Not by great numbers, but you lose 2 and you gain 3 in 8 weeks, you're still a negative loss. We're at a point now where we're down 15, 16 drivers. Every sub we have is driving like they're a regular driver. There's a reason they were a sub. They didn't want to be doing that constantly. Our mechanics are driving nonstop, so they can't do the work we need to do. It's getting done, but by them in overtime or through other avenues. Our office staff is driving constantly. We can't sustain it. But even if we could, there's going to come a time with cold and flu or anything else, COVID outbreak of any sort, where we're not going to be able to provide even what we're providing now service-wise. It's a real concern, and I wanted to bring the conversation to the board, just about what are some things we could do. If the board, there's some radical ideas here, if the board doesn't see fit to follow through, I understand. I just think we have to have the conversation, because my fear is, it's bad now, but our parents have been amazing. Our staff's been amazing. Everyone's working through this together. My concern is, it's gonna start getting a lot worse, in a month, 6, 8 weeks, as we get into winter, and we're gonna have a hard time sustaining, our transportation at a level remotely necessary. So what we have tonight to discuss, and that's all we're asking you to do, I wouldn't want to approve it tonight without having a discussion and bring back and take your questions and get feedback from a number of people, but we looked at start times and we changed them. Basically, one of the things we do now is Dearson, is a separate fleet for us basically, because of the times. So we have drivers dedicated to Dearson that aren't driving, an elementary or high school, middle school route. That's something we can change. And by changing that, we open up about 15 routes to the point where we today probably be fully staffed or real close to it. Again, I'm not here telling you our idea is the greatest thing in the world. I'm not telling you we had this great idea the other day. We're in a bad situation and we're bringing conversation to the table of how we can potentially fix it, but there are negatives for sure. And we acknowledge that, and it may not be something we want to do, but at least we want to talk about. So you have it on the screen, we've got it up there. What we basically look at is for our elementary schools, our 1st through 5th grade, moving back the start time 25 minutes and the end time 25 minutes. Instead of a 7:30 start, you got a 7:55 start. Instead of a 2 o'clock dismissal, you got a 2:25 dismissal. Again, the 25 minutes is significant. We think that's something we can work through. If there's time in the morning that parents are dropping now and they still need supervision at that time, we can absolutely work on that at the school. Would it be teachers, would it be support staff potentially? We can work on that. Middle school, 25 minute start, and then on the back end, 15 minutes. We shaved 10 minutes off the middle school and high school schedule, an hour, a minute, an hour, because on the back end, we had to kind of truncate that schedule to make sure that we weren't elongating the bus travel. So middle school start at 8:30, goes 8:55, start 3:45 dismissal. High school 8:20 start, 8:45 start now, and a 3:30 dismissal. Clay would stay the same. The big change, and what is concerning obviously, is Dearson. Dearson currently starts at 8:40. Dearson either has to go before or after our other routes, the way it sits. We looked at going after, that's late, real late. So now we're before, which is early, really early. I mean, by our acknowledgement, a 7:10 start is incredibly early. And that's why we're discussing it. It's not a slam dunk, but it's a change that allows us to provide what we think will be adequate bus service throughout the year at our current staffing level. Again, at Dearson, if parents used to the current dismissal time needed some help with supervision, we could try to provide that. And we would want to understand and work with people however possible. So I hate bringing a change to people because we changed so many times last year, and I get that. And we don't have to do this, but if we don't, I fear we're going to be looking at situations coming up in maybe the near future, maybe the distant future, that really, limit our ability to get kids to school and home in a reasonable amount of time. Not asking you to vote on it tonight. I want your feedback. If you have no interest in it at all, then we table it, and if things get bad, we can always bring it back. If you have questions, we can answer questions. I can absolutely go out to our staff, make sure parents are aware before you took action. We'd be able to get feedback there. Whatever you want, we're open to. We want to have a discussion.
Mike, is there any, when it comes to a teacher union, starting that early, is there any,
Well, I think it's safe to say the Dearson staff is not going to be in favor of this.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think people all understand that we're in a tough situation, and they're willing to have the conversation. The teacher union is at the Dearson building. We haven't gone to yet. I don't want to go to them until I got to read from the board one way or the other. We met with all 4 of our unions to give them a heads up. And again, nobody wants change like that. That's really early. But also, I think everyone understands that the situation we're in with our transportation is serious.
I think you mentioned at the beginning of your discussion that one of the problems, or one of the things that's making me difficult is that Bearded Deerson is on its own separate bus schedule from the other schools. Does this change that? Does this put the Bearded Deerson school, the buses in with the other kids, or it just resets when the routes are taking place?
No, it resets the routes, because putting them in with the other kids, our transportation department doesn't think we can do that without the same routes they have now. The problem is the driver. So those 16 drivers only do Deerson. We're 16 short right now. By moving them into, basically we looked at it as moving into tiers now. We have 3 tiers. We have a elementary tier, middle school, high school tier. Those are very similar. And then we have a separate Deerson tier. Currently, the separate Deerson tier now, they can only drive Deerson. In this situation, they will drive Deerson, an elementary route, and a high school route.
And the situations you talk about in the future are things like we have a flu outbreak or something like that, and our drivers have to call in because they're sick.
Yeah.
That's what you're concerned about in the future.
We COVID test this week. It could be a COVID outbreak at some point. It could be cold and flu season, where we typically, you can lose 7 or 8 drivers in a bad flu season a day, easily. It could be, if we lose 2 or 3 more drivers before the other drivers come on, we're in a delicate situation. It's a number of things that concern us.
With respect to the drivers, you feel that if we were to follow a plan like this, that you would have sufficient drivers at least for a while, and hopefully in the event that there would be the worst case scenario.
I think in that case, with a flu outbreak, we're in the same situation we're in currently, where we've got enough people to plug the holes for as long as we can. The problem is, if we have a flu outbreak in a month, we're already at that saturation point where everyone that can possibly drive is driving. There is no more give. This allows us to be staffed fully, and then if an emergency situation does take place, we can then fill in and try to keep the situation steady and going at a reasonable rate for as long as we can.
With respect to the high schools, when would 0 hours start?
It'd be
25 minutes.
25 minutes later, yeah.
Okay. And would this eliminate the need for having late starts?
I don't think we should do late starts right away. I think it's too confusing. It doesn't give us the PD time that we talked about, but I don't think we should do late starts and the schedule at the same time. I think there's a lot of confusion there.
Dr. Mona, we looked at how that affects us in the conference with athletics. That's not the highest priority, but it is an issue, obviously, in terms of getting the high school kids out.
Yeah, it's 15 minutes later, so there might be times we got to get kids out.
When I was here, and at 3:30, that's going to make it difficult to make it to games.
Yeah, there are going to be times we have to get some kids out earlier for events. Yep.
And then I also read an article recently in Massachusetts is now using their guard for bus drivers. They brought them into all the school districts.
Oh, wow.
And we looked into that at all, Illinois National Guard coming in?
Well, I don't think I have the power to nationalize the Illinois National Guard, but I can try.
But their whole state they're using them as bus drivers throughout the whole state right now, and it's working. So I think it's something at least we should, somewhere get that into the pipeline.
I can ask our state representative.
Yeah, it's got to come from somebody. I'll do it if I need to,
but I don't mind.
To me, it's like, they're there for emergencies. This is an emergency. Let's see if we can get them out there and help us in a situation like this. So at least I think we should push that, at least to see where that would go.
I'll just chime in a little bit. Obviously the biggest change here is Deerson, and I'm the only parent here on the board who has a kid in Deerson, and Mike and I have actually gone back and forth quite a bit since, all of this has been discussed. And, I know a lot of people will see this time and kind of be shocked by it, but I want people to know too, the alternative, there were a lot of concerns that I had. Like, poor Mike got a huge email from me with all of my concerns, and he looked at reworking this, and as early as this time is, it addresses every concern that I had in terms of, staffing, kids getting home after dark, childcare, and people being able to afford kids club early in the morning, preschool needing lunch instead of snack, just a million and one things. So if, I think at this point, I trust Mike to say if this is a crisis and we need it. And, I think that this is workable if it needs to be, but not ideal, obviously.
And you would continue to try and hire bus drivers and stuff up until the point where we could say, all right, we're we go back to like.
The turnaround time for someone getting an application into our system and getting a phone call is under 5 hours. Yeah, I mean, as soon as someone applies, we're on it. Brian watches it every day to make sure, and we, and as far as we meet our transportation department regularly. I met with our drivers, our union today. I think they would all say right now we're in crisis mode.
So if this is something that we're going to consider at the next meeting, we need to do, and in my opinion, we need to do a full court press on information. I think we need to inform parents not just about this plan, but why it's here and what we've tried to do. We've talked a lot, I think the board members know about, what you've done to try to hire, what you've done to try to outsource, all the different creative ways that you've tried to solve this, but I think it needs to be communicated because we're looking at a real problem that's here, but getting worse. And I really appreciate that that you're bringing this to us proactively and making sure that we've got some ways of solving it. My other question, and this is something I asked before, and I think Michelle sort of alluded to it. We were talking about needing morning childcare if, for example, Dearson was shifted downward. Is this, we're still going to be able to offer the after-school care until the same times? That's
Yeah.
still going to be available?
Yep. That's our plan, absolutely. I think, John, that was our plan, to communicate both the plan and then just the backstory of how we got here, just so people understand it. I mean, obviously not everyone's at every board meeting, and if they are, different agendas, and not always paying attention to this part of it, but just, how we got to this point with, we've tried to recruit drivers, we've tried to work with, we've called all the major carriers to look at, outsourcing to some degree or to help with that. We've looked at all kinds of different options, and, we are where we are today after all that effort.
So what do you need from us tonight? What are your
I mean, I guess it sounds to me like you're willing for me to get more information, get information to parents, staff, and come back in 2 weeks, if I'm reading the board correctly.
I mean, do you need an informal or a formal approval of this? In terms of the times and all that stuff? I mean, if you're gonna send information out to parents, you probably want to give them an idea what the times are.
If the board's willing to look at this, or if there's something else you want me to do, come back before we go out to parents, that'd be a good step.
Does anybody have any objection to using this as a model to inform parents of what the proposed plan is, but not if we go on tonight?
Not at all.
So people have a chance to come and talk about it? Do they have a problem doing that?
Yeah, that's what just to be clear, we don't want to vote tonight. I think this is too big. We want information out to parents, we want feedback. I want to meet with staff, I want to have their questions and concerns, and then in 2 weeks bring it back and see where everybody's at. And
Still need some proposed times or something.
absolutely, yeah.
And what the nature of it is.
Absolutely.
All right, so we're going with that, and then we'll bring it up again in 2 weeks. Unless anybody has any other questions or comments they wish to make?
I think the parents need to know that this is not a Woodstock problem. This is the state, and this is a national problem. The city of Chicago had 75 bus drivers quit in one day. Our people aren't quitting. It's just, but it is a state and national problem, and everybody's facing this. So I think we got to educate the background of it a little bit too.
I'm going to defer to my very skilled communication director on that, and I'm sure he's going to help me with that and get the message out well.
And I think there's some, I've heard some people wondering if it's an effect of us running our own system instead of outsourcing the system. And the districts that I know that are outsourcing and that are using the larger carriers, it's even worse. And they don't have control over ideas like this to try to address it because of the contracts that they have with those systems. So, yeah.
Okay. If there's nothing else then, we'll move on to our update on the back to school plan. Or was that it?
Nope. We just wanted to follow back up. being in the buildings, there's a great energy. Our kids are back. Our teachers have great energy with them. I mean, it's amazing for us to have kids back. And it's not perfect. I mean, the gentleman talking about masks, and that's a huge issue. Quarantining is a huge issue. Quarantining on the bus is a huge issue, and that's separate from our other bus issues. These are all very, very real concerns. Obviously, when it comes to masks and those other concerns, we're following the guidelines of the state, which has been, the board's our legal advice that we have to follow those guidelines. I think our kids are doing a great job. I really do. They're doing everything we ask of them in what is a tough situation, as the gentleman said, and I agree with him. It's a very tough situation. Our staff has done an amazing job. I think we're trying to really work with kids too as they see a need, get mask breaks, get them out. I think when parents have asked us about that, we've really tried to work on that as much as we can. The bus is still our Achilles heel. That's where we see our quarantines, the vast majority of them. That we haven't had a classroom quarantine yet because we're keeping 3 feet with masks. Very few in the cafeteria. But the bus is that's where we're going to see them and continue to see them. And that's, you can get mad at anybody you want, but the health department's following guidelines from the CDC and the best science that they have to set those guidelines. So, very positive. We're very positive. Kids are having great experiences, but to be honest, right, the quarantines, the buses, people get upset. It's a big deal. We understand it. We're working with them, and masks are different, and people all dealing with to varying degrees, and so a very positive start to the year. We're very excited about, but issues we're still working on. Any questions from the board or comments?
You had a rough start of the year, right? And with all the buses and all the things going on, and again, we're thankful that we have the administration that is doing as great a job as it is dealing with, navigating the issues. So,
yeah.
Thank you to you and all the staff for everything you've done, and to the parents and children who
I appreciate that. I appreciate the board support, but our staff has done an amazing job. They really have. They step up time and time again to support our kids. I'll tell you, our families have been amazing. Whether it's questions or concerns, we're still, so much support. Our kids are having a great experience, and our kids have been great. So I appreciate the support. It's been a team effort. We really look forward to carrying that into the fall.
Thank you. Okay, our last item is the approval of health, dental, vision, and other insurance contracts.
Brian's going to update you on that real quick.
Evening, everyone. The insurance committee met last Wednesday. The committee is made up of district administration, members of all 4 bargaining groups, and 2 members of the Board of Education. Present from the board was Mr. Gilmore and Dr. Bidwell. What we had was a presentation from our consultant, which we've used for many years, the Horton Group. They went over a review of the performance of our plans, went over our claims and the different, how each plan had performed, and then they made recommendations. All of the recommendations were to renew the current plans that we're doing due to the good performance and how we have been doing as a whole with our insurance program. The committee had some questions, then there was discussion, and then there was a unanimous vote to accept all of those recommendations. So you'll see in your information, those 5 plans are recommended to the board to be renewed.
Does anybody have any questions?
Just overall, we've had a good insurance year, so we were able to keep those rates down, which benefits obviously the district financially and then our employees as well. So it was good news.
All right. We're lucky. No major increases or changes of any sort, so pretty good shape. All right, if there's no further discussion, there is a suggested motion in your materials.
Move to renew a contract with Optum for the district's reinsurance plan effective October 1st, 2021. Renew a contract with VOIA for the district's ancillary coverage effective October 1st, 2021. Renew a contract with BCBS for healthcare administration effective October 1st, 2021. Renew a contract with Delta Dental for the district's dental coverage effective January 1st, 2022. And approve the renewal of a contract with VSP for the district's vision coverage effective January 1st, 2022.
Motion by Mr. Parisi. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second Seconded by Mr. Maselli. Roll call, please.
Mr. Parisi?
Yes.
Mr. Maselli?
Yes.
Dr. Bidwell?
Yes.
Mr. Headley?
Yes.
Mr. Homeless?
Yes.
Dr. Ferris?
Abstain.
Mr. Gilmore?
Yes. Okay, I'm excited to believe that there's actually a committee report this week. Am I right?
Yes, the foundation committee met and they're moving forward with plans for the fundraiser. We still don't know if it's going to be a virtual fundraiser or an in-person fundraiser.
Great. That's the committee report. And we've already heard the insurance committee report, so we don't have to deal with that. Do we have any other committees met or any other committee that they reported this time? No? Okay, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Mr. Parisi, roll, second, please.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Headley. Roll call, please.
Mr. Parisi?
Yes.
Mr. Headley?
Yes.
Dr. Ferris?
Yes.
Dr. Bidwell? Mr. Maselli?
Yes.
Mr. Homeless?
Yes.
And Mr. Gilmore?
Yes. Thank you all.
One that has like 10 minutes.